Alright, we're going to be continuing the lecture from last time. I'm going to be starting out with a new AutoCAD document here. And just as a reminder, every time you start a new AutoCAD document, you want to start off by typing units to set your units. There it is. So don't forget to set this to architectural every time. Okay. So, we went over some of the basic drawing and modification tools here. The next section, we're going to skip over annotation for now, and we're going to jump into layers. So let's go ahead and put something together that we can use. And so we'll just build a simple 10 by 10 room to start off, and then we'll start getting into some of the different layer properties we can have. So I'm going to do a 10 foot by 10 foot interior space room. So I'll start off by doing 10 foot, and there we go. 10 foot. 10 foot, and close it out. And then again we can join this, so type join with all of those selected, offset, set the distance to 6 inches for exterior walls, and then we'll offset it, so make sure the mouse is on the outside. We'll offset it this direction and click once. So that gives us our exterior walls for this 10 by 10 room. We'll also create a door here, so I'll have a door at the bottom corner. Let's go ahead and explode these. And then the way that I create the framing for the door, because when you have a door, the door isn't just completely flush with the wall, right? You have like a little bit of an inset here for the framing and for the molding that goes around the door. So I usually use whatever the wall thickness is of that door. So in this case, I'm going to do another 6-inch offset, and I'm going to offset this wall in. So that'll give me a line here that I can now use, grab this point, switch to the other side. This is now one side of my door. So then I can offset this, we'll call it 2'4", this direction. So that gives me now a space for the door. So then let's go ahead and put a window over here too. What I'll do is I'll draw a line. We'll center it right here on this wall. And then we'll call this a 2-foot window. So I have two options. I can either move this line. So, oops, not M view. Nope. So I can move this line, and again, you don't necessarily have to click here to move it, because sometimes it might snap back to that point. I can click here in the middle of nowhere and move it up, and then offset this 2 feet, and that gets me in the same spot as I would have been if I had just offset this 1 foot in each direction like that. So you can do either of those. This leaves you that little spot in the middle that you have to clean up, but you got to clean it up anyway. So we'll go ahead and trim this out here, erase those, and that gives us the holes for our door and window to go in. While we're here, let's also do a hatch. So we'll hatch is something I went over in the previous demo. This is something I usually don't do until the end. If I'm still working on a model, I won't hatch until I'm basically like finished modifying the doors and walls, or sorry, the walls themselves, because otherwise you have to keep going back and editing the hash. Like, oops. Come on. Try that again for this section. Okay. So if I need to go back and I need to say change where this wall is, well, I have to delete this hatch and then redo it. And so if you end up on a more complex, like if you have a multi-room house and you've got a complex exterior wall, you make a change, well, that's no longer correct. You have to delete the hatch and come back. So this is something that I wouldn't do this early on typically, except that this is our entire floor plan for this demo. So let's go ahead and make a door. Doors should always swing towards the closest wall. You wouldn't want a door that opens up this way, like this, because it would open up into the room. If you have a door, your doors should basically always open up towards a flat wall, and then having a little bit of space here is what allows you to have the door kind of open flush with something. You would typically then also have your light switches here. Doors in the middle of the wall like this exist, like the room I'm in right now, the bedroom that I'm in, The door is offset a little bit from here, but that's simply because of some equipment that's behind the wall. So the door has to be offset from there, and then it's part of it's offset too from the closet. So some doors do open somewhat in the middle of a wall. Try and have the door open towards the closest wall. So if for whatever reason this door was placed more here, you would still want to have it open up this way. Okay. So little side lecture on door stuff. Okay. So we know that this is 2'4" when I drew it. So what we'll do to draw the door is we'll go up 2'4". Interior doors are going to be 1 inch thick, and then we'll come back down, do 2'4" and CL. So that gives us the door right there. Then we need to do the swing again. We went over this as well. So we'll do start center end. I'm going to be smart this time, and I'll do start point is right here, the center point is right there, and the end point is there. If you did that backwards, you'd have to hold down control. The other thing is you do end up with this little tiny sliver there, and if you're one of my OCD people, you can come in and trim that right there to get it even. So that's how we would create a door. And then the next thing is windows. There are a whole bunch of different types of way to do doors and windows. These are the ways I'm showing you right now, or how I got used to doing it. You do not have to, if you find some way that you want to represent windows, that's fine. Same with doors. As long as people can look at your floor plan and understand that that is a door and that is a window, I don't think it matters. And I can argue with a bunch of people all day about this. Floor plans are representations, especially at the scale that we're working at. A door will actually have we'll get into this later, but it'll have a symbol here representing where to reference what the door is. That reference will then point to a schedule, to the schedule. The schedule will then reference an actual product, and the product will have its own rough fit and actual fit and all these other details. So what we're doing is pretty high level. There's some abstraction. Things don't have to be accurate. If you put a bed in here, it doesn't matter if you curve the edge of the bed 1 inch or 3 inch with the fillet tool. So again, these are representations of things, not the actual built-in exact dimensions of things. All right, so there's a couple different ways to do windows. This is how I do them. So I'm going to offset distance 1 inch, 1 inch. We'll draw this here, offset, oops, no. We'll paste this here so we have it inside, and then we'll paste it here. Now when you do windows, the interior side, or the window pane itself, should be biased towards the outside. So we'll offset this 1 inch in. So the center of the window would be down here in the middle. The pane itself is biased right here. And then we'll go ahead and move this another inch out. And then we'll grab this. We'll offset this 1 inch up. That way, where did it go? Make sure I can see it. And then from here I can take this, snap it to meet with this. And this could be a time where I use a fillet tool. So for example, if I take this right here, offset 1, go down, I could use the fillet tool. We'll check our radius, make sure it's set to 0. And then we would click on this and that, spacebar to start the tool again, that and that. So again, just reminding you guys, you do have all these different tools that you can use. Oops, I didn't have it. Okay. So that would set those windows. There is one problem with this though, is that I want the windows to have a reference point here. And we'll get into blocks a little bit later. So I'm actually going to draw this out right here. Do I have 2 there? Yeah. And then we'll also draw this in right here. So I'm adding all these segments, and I'll show you guys why. We're going to get into blocks later in this lecture too. And blocks are very important in terms of managing and keeping, so you don't have to go in here and rebuild all of these every single time. So that's one way you can draw a window right there. It's not the only way to draw a window. It's how I choose to draw a window right now. If this was a different type of window, I would probably draw this differently. Like if this had a split pane in the middle, I would actually start building out a framing thing here. But generally, I don't go too complex with windows. As long as you can look at that and go, okay, that looks like a window, that looks like a door, that's all we need. Okay, so for now, what I'm going to do, we'll actually take this and I'm going to select some of these things here just by clicking on them. Don't do a full left to right select because I want to leave the face that was here on the edge of this there. So we'll move this out of the way here just so it's out of there. Because remember, we have the edge that was here from the walls themselves. So I want to keep this in the same shape that it was. So for now, let's group this. Again, we'll get into blocks after this. So we'll do group, and that'll just group this so that it functions as a single thing. And what I'll do to put this back in place is I'll reference this corner right here and move it to the equivalent corner that it matches up with right there. Okay, so that gives us our window as a group. And then with the door, I can make a selection left to right and do this and grab just the door itself. If I did right to left, you can see that I would actually end up grabbing a whole bunch of other stuff I don't want. So we'll do left to right, and then we'll just group this as well. Okay, so now that we have this going on, we'll go ahead and hop into layer properties here. Layers are a way of sorting things and organizing your files and the content in the file. As we get deeper and deeper into AutoCAD, you're going to need better management, not just in terms of what's what, but also it helps to be able to filter things out. When we get into actually putting together the construction documents in this, you're not going to want to have to redraw. Like if I have a electrical plan, a plumbing plan, a floor plan, a furniture plan, etc., you don't make an individual copy of every single one of those. You make one set of walls, doors, and windows, and then you put different content in here. And then when we come here, and I'll show you in a bit, we'll filter that out. So let's do that right now just as a simple exercise. Let's go ahead and hit new. It's this little starburst one right here at the top. So we'll name this layer windows. We'll do that again, and we'll create another one called doors. And then we'll create another one called walls. Now, you have a couple different settings here. We'll come back to those in a second, but let's go ahead and assign colors first. So I'll click on this little color box. You can actually drag this and make it a lot easier to see too. So and we'll jump into kind of all of these in a little bit here. All right, so we have these different settings. The colors, the one we're going to work with right now. When you're working, always stay on the 0 layer. What could happen, and I've had a couple students experience this, is they worked on one part of their model on the walls layer and then another part on the windows layer, or a default layer in Windows, and then but it was a door. So when they created that door as a group and then hid the doors group, part of their model disappeared that shouldn't have. So always make sure you're working on the 0 layer. You can tell what it is by the fact that it's got a check mark on it. Okay, let's assign colors here. For Windows, we'll go ahead and make it this little blue color here. And again, this is one of those things, I do not care what color you choose. I think it's more important that you guys understand that there is a color that you can choose and set here than it is to, necessarily have a fixed thing. Every company has its own set of color codes that they use for all kinds of different stuff. All right, so I'll go ahead and leave the walls white, and then we'll set the doors to Is there a good brown in here? I'll go for that for doors. So again, I think it's more important that you understand that you can set the colors rather than saying you need to set the colors to this every time, because you will come across a situation where you aren't supposed to set the colors to that. So yeah, just this is knowing you can change it is 3/4 of the battle here. Okay. So let's go ahead and leave the rest of these here. And what we have, we're still working on layer 0. I want to assign this to a layer. So what I'll do is I'll click on this window, and then on this drop down, I'll click on Windows. Okay. So see how it just turned blue? That's the color that we assigned to the window. When I deselect this, so I can hit escape to deselect it, I'm back to 0 layer. Again, do not change off of the 0 layer. Next, I'll get this door, and I'll assign it to the door layer. Now when I go into the layer properties here, if I could, let me see, keep it visible right there. So I can hide these different, oh, I didn't do the doors, or the walls either. So actually let's hide the wall, or sorry, hide the doors, hide the windows, and then the rest of these are now on my walls. So it's pretty easy to filter basically everything out, and then grab these. Okay, so then we can turn these back on by clicking the little light bulb here. Now the freeze is something different, and let's go actually, now that we're at this point, let's hop out to our layout here. I talked about this the other day, but I didn't really talk in detail. So let's go ahead and go into this viewport by double clicking on it, and we'll hide the grid. And right now we have just this right here. This is our little floor plan that we're working on. And so let's say I don't want to show, and let's do the same thing over here too. So we'll just center that, zoom it out a little bit. Don't worry if the zoom doesn't match, it's fine. So I've got layout 1, layout, oops, don't need layout 3. Okay, go ahead and delete it. Okay, so if I jump between these two, you can see they're the same. Now what if I want to hide something? So remember I was talking about how we might have different sheets where we would have plumbing view, electrical view, furniture, for example. Well, I'm not going to want one of those in there. So let's say that for whatever reason, let's put, let's go ahead and add those options so we can actually work with something more accurate. So we'll have our electrical, oops, except I can't spell, electrical, there we go. And then we'll put another one here for furniture. Okay. And then we'll just throw in some boxes real quick here. So this will be my electrical and this will be my furniture. Oops. Try that again. Okay. So this one, furniture. This one, oops, deselect. This is electrical. We'll go ahead and make the electrical yellow so it's a big, scary, zappy color. And then the furniture will make green. Okay. So we've got our electrical and our furniture there. So if I want to filter out, this is my furniture plan, I don't want to have my electrical thing in there, I would go in here and I would double click. And if I hide the electrical, great. This one looks fantastic, right? I can move on. But if I switch over here, you can see the electrical is also gone from this one. So we don't want to use the light bulb here to filter things out. We want to use the freeze, and specifically when we're at this point, we want to use the viewport freeze. So if I double click in this viewport, this will be my electrical view. I'll use this column right here, and we'll freeze in the current viewport. So I'll freeze that, it's gone here, and then if I go to this one, I can freeze the electrical in this one. So now I've got the same view, but we're using the freezing to filter what's visible. All right. Okay. So the other thing, and this is, I'll show you guys this now because it's something that we end up dealing with a lot later in the semester, is going to be line dashes. So let's see if I can work out line dashes without it being crazy, annoying, complicated. So typically what I have is we would have, and Ruben will go over this later, and then in the graphics for when you guys will really dive into doing construction documents. But what you would end up having is something like floor 1, and then So what level of the building you're on, because you'll reuse the same walls often, but then you'll have different floors within that you'll represent. Then there's the category. So this might be fern as the category, and then upper. And there's a whole set of categories depending on which drafting style you're working with. Like, are you using universal building codes and stuff? We're going to keep this class simple, so this might be something we do for now, but I just want to give you guys an example. So we'll have floor 1 furniture upper, floor 1 furniture lower, and then you might have, and then this would just be your floor 1 furniture, right? So when you go in here, you'll have different settings. So for the upper, anything that's behind the view, so if you're looking at this floor plan, we're not looking at it, we're looking at it in a 2D representation of this room. So in this, say this is an 8-foot tall space, our viewport here that we're drawing this room from the perspective of is going to be about 4 feet off the ground, right? So if I draw a line here, oops, cannot type, and it's 8 feet tall, 10 foot wide, then we have a view plane that we're intersecting this model with at 4 feet right here. So this is cutting through our model, and anything that we see that's down below this is something that, oops, I can't even draw straight arrows. Come on. So pretend that's pointing straight down. So anything that's straight down from this will represent as solid. Anything that's up behind this will represent as dashes. So you might have something like a soffit that comes off the wall here. It's not 1 inch. And you might have to represent this in your floor plan. Or not a soffit, but oops, come on. So if I was working on this as a floor plan and we had this little offset going around from the ceiling, we'd actually have a line to represent that going around the floor plan. It would be here. And we'd have to make sure, like, let's say, for the sake of brevity, let's just say that it's going down each side here. So these lines would have to be dashed to indicate that there's something up here. So we probably shouldn't do furniture, but just as an example. So the other thing we'll need to set up the line style for this. And we'll make sure that's, yeah, so you already screwed that part up. This is why I don't like assigning layers too early. So let's make sure this stays on layer 0. Let's make sure this is on layer 0 too. Okay, so we have this right here. This is going to be our floor upper. So let's go ahead and move that right there. And then for this, we will set the line type. So we'll click on this box right here. We need to load a line type. There's a whole bunch of different line types in here. I'm a big fan of hidden 2. So we'll go ahead, or sorry, hidden x2. So we'll go ahead and do that. So this is a hidden line style that we're using. Oops, I didn't click on it apparently. Okay, so there we go. We've got hidden x2 right there now. So you can see right here that this is very fine dash. It's, you basically, you know, at a certain point it doesn't matter. If I go to my floor plan view here, you can see that it works, but it's still a bit big. And so one of the things I literally got a text from a previous student earlier in the semester already asking how to reconfigure this. So this is why I want to go over this with you guys. So you're going to need to know a couple commands to make this work. So there's LT scale, which is your line type scale. This is going to be a scale factor, so as I change this, it's going to change how big this line represents. So right now I'm set at 1. If I set it to 2, see how that got bigger? If I set this to 0.5, the lines will get smaller. There's also PSLT scale, which is paper space LT scale, and this is a 1 or a 0. So if I set this to 0, it's usually going to change how it renders it. And then there's MSLT scale, which is model space LT scale. And then, how do I put this? If for whatever reason you're making changes and it doesn't do anything, sometimes you need to type regen. Oops, regen all, and it'll re-render the settings that it has. What's more important is that you should have it scaled here in your paper space. So if you double click inside that viewport, come down here, when you double click you can see that this little area changes and we get some new options here. So we'll go ahead and set this to 1/4 inch. We'll do that to the other one as well. And then in our model space for now, we'll also set this to 1/4 inch. And then we'll go back to MSLT scale. We'll set this to 1, regen, and now this is properly functioning at the scale that we want it to. So it should be pretty identical to what's out here. Oh, did I turn off paper space? Nope. PSLT scale. Set that to 1, regen all. Okay, so now that I have this viewport, and my model space, we should be looking identical. Quarter inch. Quarter inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Still looks off, right? Yeah, that's just different numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so then in here we'll do PSLT scale and, oh no, LT scale. Nope, escape LT scale. 0.5, regen all. Okay. So it might be page specific. That's weird. I've never noticed that before. But okay, so now we should have the same number of dashes on each of these pages. So then if you're sitting here and going, okay, well, these lines aren't quite the size I want, we can go in there and again, we can do LT scale. And we'll set this to 0.25. I like going in fractions. So if you go 1/2 inch or 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, and find one that works good for it. So I think that's a good size for it. Let's double check our model spaces, or sorry, paper spaces, and we're good there. So this is a good zoom for this hidden line. Now I try not to use multiple hidden lines because if I was to use a different hidden line, let's go ahead and change this to a different one. So we'll call this, we'll just do the hidden 2. And you can see right here, they're vastly different sizes. So if I choose hidden 2, now it's a completely different size here. So you want to find ones that work together and stick to those. But it's really going to depend on how you're setting up your model. Sometimes it depends on what sizes your partners have already specified. So try and find ones that work for your model and work with each other, and just use that little that preview that you've got right here. You can kind of see like, oh, if I choose like dash this one right here, you can see that this one probably works better with this versus going down to this smaller one right here if you jump between these two. But it's just something that I think it's more important that you know how to set your line type, how these correspond to each other, and then using the LT scale, PSLT scale, and MSLT scale in order to configure these settings. Once you know how to do that, you can set it up however you like, okay? The other thing we need to talk about is that next row over too. So we just did line type, we haven't talked about line weight. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw a line right here, and then I'm gonna offset this 6 inches, oops, and we'll do multiple. So I'll just draw a whole bunch of these down here. Now, I've been having you guys set layer properties as well, and layers are important for a top level organization, but sometimes you do need to go and change something at a lower level that's very specific. So you do have the properties right here, and by default, you just want to have things work by the layer, because if you need to change something about a layer, you don't want to have to go in and make a million changes. So use the properties right here. Let's get rid of this. But I want you to know that this is available too. So why don't we go in here, and what we'll do is we'll change the line thickness right here, figure out what a good thickness is. So I'm just going to go each one of these, setting these to a different thickness. Make sure you deselect between each of them if you're following along on this. And because I can never remember which one I want to use here. I can barely remember which one I selected last time. So, but I don't think that these thicknesses that it shows are super accurate. So it just helps going in here and setting this up. I think that's probably fine. So let's go ahead here and we'll move this over, and you can see that you still can't see really a thickness difference there. Oops, get out of that. So once we have that, our next step is going to be type LW, which is going to be our line weight. Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay. So there we can see the line thicknesses. So we didn't do these last couple ones. But what line weights are important for, especially when, let me see if we can do a print preview real quick. I don't, no, print. Nope, no. Get out of there. Print. Pull up preview. Oh, I need to set up a printer. 1 second. We'll set to Adobe PDF and we'll preview. Okay, so you can see that there are different thicknesses here. This is that default that we were just having on that sheet right there. And the times that you'd actually want to use these thicknesses is to represent different things. Usually what it's used for is in the case of different phases, for example. We might use different line weights to highlight changes, like so the changes that we would be making in a specific phase would be darker. Changes that were in the background that are not relevant to that phase might be lighter. If we're doing something like flooring, you don't want to have your drawing be overwhelmed. So if we were to, let me hop out of there, if we were to come in here and apply flooring, so let's hide our floor upper, furniture, electrical, door. You guys don't have to follow along with this, I'm just kind of doing this as a demo. But if we were to come here and hatch a tile pattern, let's see, we've got, oh, and then we need to change the scale of this. So let me just, okay. Of course it's not in that properties. Let's go to prop. And we've got our scale right here. So let's scale this to, because it's, what's going on is it's just too small. Let's go 100, no, let's go to 0.001. Okay, I don't like this hatch, then we'll just change this to a different hatch. Oops. Alright, there's our scale. Okay, so that gives us a starting point. Let's take this down to 50. Take it down to 25. Take it down to 2. There we go. Okay, so we'll scale this to something that's appropriate. looks like that'll work. Okay, so we've got our tile scaled in here, but if we actually go to look at this now, see how kind of overwhelming that is? So this is a case where we might want to have this hatch be a very, oops, not that one. Keep that properties window open. So we might have the line type be very, very thin right here. So line weight, we'll set that to that. And then in our plan view, this shouldn't be as heavy. So it's a little bit easier to read when you have it like that. There might also be cases where you might want to take this and instead of inheriting the default settings that are there, you might want to have this be a lighter color as well. So again, it helps increase the readability. Why don't I just show it instead of showing you the edge? So that helps increase the readability of your model. So you can still do stuff inside this space, but it's easier to read what's going on here by changing some of those settings. And that's one of those times where I'd be like, okay, well, this is a floor, give it an exception so that you can work on it. All right, so kind of getting a little sidetracked, but that's how you would manage your line weights. We're not going to go into that right now, but that's the other option that you do have to set right here. But for now, just go ahead and leave that by default. And I just wanted to show you guys. So let's go ahead and turn some of these other things back on. And you can see that now we've got kind of a mess in here. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. So this is one of those times where, you know, maybe we're just doing a finish plan and we're just showing what our finishes are. So in this viewport for that finish plan, again, we'd want to come in here. Oh, that was there. And so for this plan, we'd want to hide the upper that's here. And again, we would double click in the viewport, and then we'll go ahead and hide the, well, we've got that hidden, we've got that hidden, and we've got the upper hidden. So now we can see what's going on and what's specific to this floor plan. Whereas this one, what did I put that on? Floor lower? We would simply not have the lower, oh, I didn't assign it. Oops. So let's go ahead and assign this to the floor. Oh, I did furniture lower, but that would be a case where we just create a new plan view, or sorry, a new layer. So you'll likely end up with a whole bunch of layers in later projects, but for now this is just a quick demo, so we're only going to do a couple. So that's how you guys, I just wanted to cover that because that kind of gets you all the information you need on layers. You've got, again, your hide, the freeze column there. It kind of functions as the same thing here, but it just stay away from this one. Generally, you just want to have on the main layers menu here. You'll want to manage the viewport freeze from the individual viewport itself, so you can come in here. I kind of just like going through this menu sometimes, but you can keep this open and double click in here and change the viewport freeze from this window as well. Another thing to watch out for, I have had it, you can lock the layers, but this plot option, I've had times where students are like, I went to go print and my walls aren't showing up, and we spend 30 minutes looking through it, and then I don't realize that they had their walls like unchecked there. So if we're looking at this right now, everything looks fine. You look in this menu, it all looks fine, and then we go to plot, preview, and really? We just did this. PDF. Okay. So we go to plot, and they don't have their walls, right? And they're like, I think it legitimately took us 20 minutes to figure this out because I didn't think that they had gone in there and changed that setting. So staying in this menu right here prevents you from getting into that kind of trouble. There are some things you don't want to print. So one of the things that I will end up having you guys do later in the semester too is you don't want to print these borders for your viewports. So a habit I got into early on was creating a layer for my viewports. Anything that I don't want to go to print, I set the color to be one of these annoying fuchsia colors. So I know that anytime I see fuchsia, I get rid of that fuchsia. You want to hide that right there, and then we can assign the viewports themselves to that layer. And then let's go back into this plot, print to PDF, preview. So now we don't see the viewport there. So you don't want these viewport windows to show up. There's a lot of cases where you don't want some things to show up. So you can either do this where you tell it to not plot it, or you just do that and tell it to hide the thing entirely. Even though it's hidden, you can still come in here and double click on there to access these. But I think it also creates a cleaner sheet when you're working. Okay. Oh, the other thing we were going to get into was blocks, and then we'll switch over to your milestone for the week. So, when we were here earlier, we made your doors and windows as a group. I'm going to go ahead and Control C, Control V, and we'll paste that out here. So, another thing that you can do is blocks. This is a group. If I go and change this group right here, if I double click in here and we move that, it doesn't affect this in any way. So groups are just groups of lines that are not associated with each other in any way. What a block is a defined element that you can access again later. So I'll go ahead and explode this, or sorry, ungroup, because we're a group. Okay. All right, so now we have all these individual segments again. So we'll go ahead and delete that. We don't, well, let's leave it there, and we'll just move it. So move it out there. So we have this set of lines right here. We'll go ahead and move these back to the 0 layer. So always work on your 0 layer and then move things from there. So to create a block, we'll go ahead and select everything that makes up the block, and then you can click on the create right here, or I just type block, and it gives us this menu right here. So we have 3 settings we need to do every time, or at least review every time. So I usually start at the left, your base point. Let's specify it on screen, or sorry, we'll pick points. When I choose a pick point, I'm going to use a reference point that I have. So let me jump back out and we'll use the door because that's a better example. So we'll paste our door there just so we got a copy. See, this is one of those times where you wouldn't want to try moving in here because you might get stuck. Try and reference something outside. Okay, so let's set this back to 0 layer. Did I just change my door color? Okay. And then we'll go ahead and ungroup this as well. So the door is probably a better example than the window, because the window's got a whole bunch of corners there. The door, that corner is where we built it off of. So we have 2 places. Excuse me. We have 2 places that we'd want to reference when we're putting together this block. So if I select this door here, we'll go ahead and do block. And when we pick our point, we want to choose one that will be physically referenced that we can snap to. So that'll either be this corner, or I'm a big fan of the corner right here. And I like this corner because if we have double doors that swing open, I can use this on both sides, whereas this is a floating point in the middle of nowhere. So I use this one for doors, so I'll click there. It pops us back in this window. So we've specified our base point. Object, we've already selected it, so we don't need to select anything. And then behavior, we're going to go ahead and leave annotative off for now, but we'll be getting into a lecture that next week. The last thing we need is a name, so I'm going to call this door dash or underscore 2'4". And I think it's not going to let me use some of these characters. I always forget which ones it doesn't let us use, so I'll hit OK. There we go, it got mad. Let's go ahead and take the single quote out. I'll do 2'4". Okay. So that just converted this into a block. I don't know, why is that brown? Did I... Go ahead and explode that. I thought I turned this back to 0. try to get a block. We'll pick our point, re-reference that to overwrite, and then go ahead and hit OK, redefine it. Okay, so now we have that block saved. If we place this, what's going on? Hold on, let me figure this out. Okay, well I just redid the process there and it seems to be working fine. I'll just do it on camera here, make sure we're all on the same page. So I'll explode this, select it, block. I think it just didn't like when I switched it up here. So we'll go ahead and pick our point with the name set there, click on that. We've selected our objects and we've got our behaviors set as is. So I'll hit OK, redefine, and that's what I should see, is I should see it snap into something with a single point. Okay, so now let's go right here. Let's go ahead and hide this floor that we added so I can see. Okay, and we'll get rid of these uppers too. So when I'm working on this now, I want to come in here and I want to do block insert. I can click on this and now I can snap it to that corner right there. Get rid of this. So that lets us so if I have a whole bunch of these doors, I can quickly place a whole bunch. Later, I'm not sure if I'll redo the video or I'll reuse one from a previous semester for your project 2. But when I did mine and recorded it, I had a whole bunch of doors that were the same size. So now that I've done this one, I don't have to try and select all this, copy and paste this. I can just do a copy, set my base point as this same point on there, and then I can just I can just keep clicking around to different points, go right down a hallway, keep placing doors as needed. So that's why you'd want to set these up to have that familiar or identical base point. So if I was going to do this same window, I would do block, and we'll call this window underscore 2, because it's a 2-foot window. So when I pick the point here, I'll choose either the inside or outside. Either side doesn't matter because it's the window, so you're always going to have a reference point there. But I'll choose this one right here. We've specified on screen we've got all our 20 objects, and then behavior again is nothing's going to change on this so far. So we've got that, and now we've got that one point. And then if I go to insert, I can just place that window right there. The nice thing about blocks is now that I've created this window right here, for example, what if I want different sizes? I can explode this. Since I know that it's exactly a 2 foot, I can move this edge right here. So I can move this up 1 foot, and then each of these I can just extend straight out. And now I can take this, do block again, and this is window 3 foot. Pick my point. Objects are selected, behavior's good. Now I've got a second window size. So if you want to quickly iterate over a bunch of different window sizes, same with doors, but doors you kind of just have to redraw the whole thing. But it keeps these consistent. Another thing is, I don't know where they save them anymore, but I used to have a whole collection of blocks. Long term, it would be beneficial to you to not only have a template file in AutoCAD that you start all your projects from, but also to have a block collection that you create and save. So I mentioned, when you start a new AutoCAD file, you have to go in and set your units. Well, if you create a template file, which new, so you can create a drawing, and then once you've created that drawing, you can save it. As a drawing template right here. And what you would do with that is you would have your units saved, so you don't have to change your units. You would have, say maybe you've got a specific set of layers saved. You wouldn't have to recreate all your layers with the colors and line thicknesses that you need. You might have a whole collection of blocks so that when you go to insert things, you've got 200-300 blocks already loaded of different door types, different window types, different pieces of furniture, different plumbing, different electrical specifications. So you'd be able to go through and do a whole bunch of that by saving a template. I'm not going to get into that, but especially not right now. But I might cover it later. But it is handy having a collection of blocks that you can reference so that you don't have to keep redrawing them every single time. And then next week, we're also going to be getting a bit into documentation and some of the symbols and like the leader or labels for the drawings. You're going to want to be able to not have to redraw those every single model. So I'll show you guys something you can reuse in different ways with dynamic blocks, and then we'll also be doing annotative sizing. Okay, so let me double check here. We went over layers, we went over blocks, we went over properties, we grouped stuff. There's not much to it. You either group it or ungroup it, so it's not crazy complex. We'll be also getting into annotation next week, so text and dimensioning, but that'll be a separate thing next week, and then we'll also be doing title blocks as well. So for now, this is all as far as we're going to go today, and then you guys will have a milestone that should be posted as well. You'll mostly be redoing this, but you'll be redoing some fairly specific things, and I'll have you guys take an extra step and model some stuff. Okay, that's all we're going to do for today, so I'll see you guys in the milestone video.